Okay, well, if you are just joining us, welcome. I'm Lauren Van Hemert from RDU on Stage, and I'm here with Charles Phaneuf, who's the president of the United Arts Council. And I'm so glad you're here with me tonight because we have a lot to talk about. Funding.
We sure do.
And I will give you a minute to set up your watch party and we'll be good to go. We're going to talk a lot about funding and we're going to throw out a lot of information to you. And if you look in the if you look in the description of the video, you'll see a lot of the links that we will be referencing. So you'll have those links that we're talking about. And of course, if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments and we'll try to get to them. But thank you. Thanks again for being here. You stepped into the role. I know you had so many plans, Charles.
Didn't we all?
Yes, you stepped into this role in February, just before everything shut down. And I know the initial vision you had from what you told Indie Week was really to create a county-wide vision for the arts and how the county and municipalities could really work together. So have you had to, I'll use the word of the year, pivot your vision since everything shut down? Because you were only there a few weeks before everything closed.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for remembering all the way back to February. Goodness gracious, that feels like years ago, and back when we could see each other at the theater and things like that. I think the last time I saw you in person was maybe at Playmakers for a show. I'm trying to remember what
maybe Ragtime. Did I see you at a Curious Incident? I may have seen
yeah, maybe it was there. Yeah, man, I just like miss those interactions. Just like seeing people and having hugs and things like that. Gosh, I'm getting a little emotional. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's crazy, man. I mean, it's just crazy. It's I think that we're to a large extent, where we're at all is trying to figure out how to survive, and that's not to discount all of the amazing creative things that people are doing. I mean, just, we've seen, I think, some really fantastic online things. Now we're starting to see more social distance things. Of course, Burning Coal about to open a show. I know Rainbow Dance Company Arts Together was going to do an outdoor show at the Art Museum this weekend. That got rained out, but I think we'll see more of those kind of social distance things, more online things. So there's so much great work happening, but none of us are doing exactly what we thought we would be doing. And for us, because we're an organization, so the mission of United Arts is that we build a better Raleigh and Wake County through supportive and advocacy for the arts. And in this moment, that is just helping organizations do whatever they can to survive. So one thing we've been doing with the Office of Raleigh Arts, we've been gathering all the arts execs twice a month to do a virtual coffee or a virtual happy hour, just so we can all see each other and connect and share resources or commiserate or whatever. And then a lot of it has been this grant funding. And the good news is we were able to actually increase our grant funding by a decent margin, even before the CARES Act funding, because there's a number of things that we typically do that we're not able to do right now. So for example, we normally run the county normally supports us in doing grants so that schools can take a field trip. Well, nobody's doing field trips right now. So that's more money that we could just put towards organizational grants. We were able to increase individual artist grants by 4 times from what we did last year. So, I feel like to a large extent, what we're doing is just a Band-Aid. But when we hear back from organizations saying, thank you for finding more dollars for us this year, this is going to make a big difference. I know, every little bit helps, right? And I think that the organization, United Arts, is not in that different of a place than we all are as patrons of the arts, consumers of the arts, where you know, even just buying a $10 ticket to somebody's online stream, or, you know, giving them a few dollars is what, you know, is what we should all be doing, right? We can't, none of us are going to cure COVID next week, but we can all do a little bit to help all the organizations be a little healthier and, you know, get through to the other side a little better, you know, than they might if we aren't prioritizing that. So that's, you know, and I know you'd asked, I'm sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but you know, some of the larger, you know, vision things, I think some of that is going to be, you know, further out, just because right now it's a little tricky to talk about planning for the future, but we're starting to put some things in place so that happens. Interestingly enough, right before COVID, Los Angeles County put out a countywide cultural master plan. And to the best of my knowledge, they're one of the first counties to do that. Although there's pretty close to comprehensive visions in a lot of other places, particularly Charlotte-Mecklenburg has done a lot more planning for culture countywide than we have here. So it's an opportunity, you know, so we're laying a lot of the groundwork for that right now. And you know, we will get to that vision, but, you know, first we all need to survive, and we need to all support our local artists and arts organizations, which I know you've been doing. Goodness gracious, 150 live chats you've had, and in addition to all the other things that you do.
Yeah, yeah, we've been busy. As we inch closer to reopening, I know, and I feel like somewhere in social media, I saw maybe a few months ago that you were on a task force to really look at what reopening our arts venues might look like. Some of them have opened, some of the museums, the theaters are inching closer to reopening. So what are some of the safety guidelines, safety procedures in place as you speak to arts organizations, particularly the museums that have reopened? Should people feel safe and confident going back to these venues? I know, you know, a lot of us have been sheltered in place for so long. It's
Yeah.
scary to think about going out into a public building.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I actually am not on any task force that I know
Okay.
of, but who knows? I mean, you know, it's an interesting time, right? But I am on the board of Arts North Carolina, and Arts North Carolina has been doing a lot around that. And
Yes.
there is like a statewide task force. And so you know, I mean, honestly, the best thing, and if you haven't had Nate on,
I've had Nate on,
you
but
have,
it's time
okay,
to
cool.
touch base with him
Probably
again.
time to have him back. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to keep up with you, Lauren. You're doing so many of these chats and stuff. But you know, they're doing a really good job of gathering that information. He just sent another, you know, email you may have seen out about like, well, what does the extension of phase 3 mean? And of course, right now for theaters, they can have up to 25 people. But if they're showing movies, the guidelines are slightly different. Then of course, the guidelines are different for outside. But I mean, I can say, you know, for the organizations that I'm talking with, I know that the ones that are reopening are taking things very, very seriously. And but I think that if patrons don't feel comfortable, or if they have questions, I know that these organizations will welcome those questions, because they want to know what's on people's minds, and they want them, when they do come back, to feel safe and well cared for. I think it's really interesting. You know, it seems like the majority of museums in town that have reopened have done it with the timed entry, which I think is really smart. I think that's the type of thing that as a patron I would be intrigued by, right? Because it's like, I know that I can go there at a certain time and there aren't going to be a ton of people. And, you know, so that's just like in, you know, I haven't been yet, but like that's in our plan for the next few weeks. I think we're going to start by going to the Gregg Museum and checking that out, especially because that's a little bit of a smaller museum. You know, one of the things I think that is interesting about this moment too is that in a lot of ways, as things reopen, I think that some of the smaller venues may be more attractive to people, right? Because, you know, would you rather go to a smaller theater where you know there's not going to be a ton of people, or do you want to go? I don't know. I can see that going both ways, and I'm not trying to be negative about the larger spaces as well. But in a way, if you're going to be in a socially distanced audience, you might rather be in a socially distanced audience in a place where you're not so far away, as opposed to looking at rows and rows of empty seats, right? So in a way, it may kind of benefit some of the small organizations, but I mean, it depends on what people want. But yeah, I think the biggest thing I can say is that I know everybody's taking it really seriously. You know, Arts North Carolina is a great resource, and that if people have questions, you know, please ask those venues, because they're going to be eager to have that conversation with you and do everything that they can to make you comfortable when you come back.
And a lot of places, I know Theater Raleigh is doing a concert in November, but they are doing it both in person and live streamed. So some places are offering kind of these dual, if you're not comfortable, you've got this virtual option, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, that's
Um,
interesting. You know, we may see that continue too, right? Because you know, accessibility. I know accessibility is important to you, Lauren. I think that's just a huge thing. I mean, that we're kind of solving a you know, another problem at the same time, or at least helping to address another problem by just making more content available online. So I think that's really, I'm hopeful that'll stick around for a lot of events.
I hope so. I hope so too. And I hope people return to live. There's nothing, I know you feel the same way I do. There's just nothing like the live experience. Um, I know another thing that kind of um, I did see on your website, I did see on social media, on the United Arts Council website, is you moved out of your Glenwood South
I
office
did.
space to save monies and make those monies available to artists and organizations. Any other big changes that you guys have done at United Arts Council that you can share?
Well, yeah, that's the biggest one. And I mean, we were fortunate that our landlord was willing to let us out of the lease. And I mean, really, it just made a lot of sense while we're working from home to save those dollars and to invest them in the arts community rather than pay for an empty office. You know, that would have really, you know, hurt my feelings if we were still paying rent on that. You know, there's a few things in the works, but you know, there's nothing else that I mean, you know, the biggest single thing honestly is the CARES Act funding. And well, I'll kind of tease, we will be making an announcement pretty soon about some additional kind of fundraising that we're going to do to match those CARES Act dollars. And we are having conversations beyond just Wake County about how as a region do we make an investment, a greater investment in the arts right now. But I'm not able to share those details just yet. Just say stay tuned.
Stay
Or if
tuned.
I have any board members listening, they'll know what I'm talking about. But so
And if you and like if United Arts Council has a newsletter, the website, the link to the United Arts Council website is also in the post for this video. So statewide, according to the American Arts Impact Survey, the total financial impact COVID has had on our arts organizations in the state of North Carolina has been approximately 83 million. And that's with about 700 organizations responding to the Artist Impact Survey. Does that sound like an accurate number statewide to you?
I think it's low. I think it's really low because only organizations that have reported, and I get the sense from people I talk to that a fair number of organizations are still just in such crisis mode that they haven't had a chance to really fully project what their losses are. And then in some cases, it's also really tricky because a lot of the organizations that operate on a subscription model may not have given refunds, but they've just rolled that income forward. And so what they're going to do, even if it's not income that they've lost, then it's going to decrease their capacity for the future, because they've got, even when they can start performing, whether it's at partial or full capacity, they're going to have this backlog of, you know, subscribers to which, you know, it's not, I think I understand why they're doing it. I don't think it's a bad idea. But yeah, I mean, if you think, sorry, I'm just reaching for my handy fact sheet. Americans for the Arts, Arts and Economic Prosperity. I mean, we were, you know, our total direct expenditures in the nonprofit arts community in 2015 for the year were 557 million. That's just in the county. And if you think about by the end of this, we may have lost pretty much a whole year, and that's one county.
Or longer.
So
A
yeah,
year
or
or longer.
longer. So yeah, 83 is really, really low. You and I, as we were chatting before this, we also talked a little bit about the Brookings. So as I understand it, and it's the best data we have right now, what Americans for the Arts have, but it is relying on what people are able to report or what they've realized. Brookings looked at just from April to July, and they did do it by metropolitan area, and they use more macro data, as I understand. People can check it out if they want to. It's called Lost Art, Measuring COVID-19's Devastating Impact on America's Creative Economy. They put the study out in August, and they found that just between April and July in Raleigh, we lost 31% of creative industry jobs. So that also would be low, I think, because it's just April to July, and 6.9% of annual sales. And again, that's of the whole year, the loss just in 3 months. So again, if you project that out, I think numbers like 83 million for the state seem low. So, and I mean, of course, unfortunately, organizations have lower costs too, because they've eliminated positions, they've cut other things. So, the lost income does not necessarily equate to a total cash loss or loss on an income statement, but it is a massive loss.
And we spoke back in April. I interviewed you for the audio podcast, and you were really emphasizing the importance for organizations to fill out that impact survey, because it is good to have a
Right.
so should people still be filling out those surveys? Because the way I understand it, it's a dynamic document. It doesn't,
Yeah,
it's not one and done.
absolutely. Yeah, I
Keep
mean, more
filling out
data.
the survey.
Exactly. More data is better than less data. And I think also this is such an unknown situation that, you've got to kind of, anytime I have an opportunity to kind of talk about the impact on the arts, I try to say, well, this is how Brookings is coming at it, and this is what we have from Americans for the Arts, and then this is what we can deduce based on what we know in a normal year, 557 million.
Yeah.
So it's, between all those things, just all those different data points help to tell the story. So.
And just to stay on the artist impact survey for a minute, the numbers have changed. And I don't know if it's because more people have responded to the survey since April, May, June, but back when I first interviewed you in April, about 46% of North Carolina arts organizations didn't think they would survive COVID-19. Now that number is down to 12%. So at the 12% number, I don't want people to get too comfortable, because our arts organizations aren't out of the woods yet.
Right.
We still need to support them. So what should concerned patrons of the arts, art lovers, theater lovers really be thinking about as they look at some of these numbers?
Yeah, well, I already mentioned a couple different things. I think if an organization is doing a live stream event or a live stream fundraiser, I mean, I think, or a social distance thing, I certainly think, or when we go back in person, like, show up, show people some love, I mean, I know we've done a few different live stream things that local theaters have done, and and we also we checked out the thing that the ballet and the North Carolina Theater did together. We're trying to participate in lots of different things that people are doing, and I mean, I'm not asking people for comps right now. Like, even though we're a funder, we technically get comps. I'm like, no, I'm going to give you my 10, 15, however many dollars. I think you need it and I can afford it. So I'm going to do that. People should donate if they're able to, I mean, that's, if you're employed and you're worried about those arts organizations surviving, then, give them $20, give them, whatever you can do, $50, whatever you can manage to do. I think that's really important. And I mean, it even, it does relate to voting. We're in early voting. We're 8 days away from the election. I think we're all tired of hearing about it, but you can see Americans for the Arts did a congressional scorecard, so you can see who supports the arts. And I do think it's important to just remember that there's some elected officials both locally and nationally who prioritize the arts. And if this matters to you, Americans for the Arts also has their Arts Vote initiative. United Arts, we hosted a county commissioners candidate forum 2 weeks ago with Wake Up Wake County, but across the state, there's actually still been local election advocacy happening, whether people are having forums or socially distanced meet and greets, all this stuff matters. And in some ways, I think is both about what we can do as individuals, like I said, buying those tickets or making a donation, but, government support right now is really important too. So that's a thing to keep your eye on, as we're all thinking about casting our ballots.
We're going to talk about Wake County and the CARES Act funding in a second, but we have a question from Facebook. Kimberly wanted to know, are there arts options for smaller towns in Wake County? We do maintain a theater calendar, but we don't have a total arts calendar. Do you know of other things happening in smaller municipalities or smaller towns?
Yeah, and hey, Kimberly, I saw you ask that question. I appreciate Lauren calling it out. Yeah, I think, the most comprehensive calendar countywide is, well, there's a couple, but Visit Raleigh has a great one. Our Convention and Visitors Bureau. Classical Voice in North Carolina has a really good one too. So those are a couple of good places to look just for centralized information about what's happening. But I am not entirely sure how many of these smaller towns, most of the smaller towns in Wake County have a performing arts center now, right? Like whether we're talking Fuquay, Garner, Wake Forest, Cary has several. I've not seen them necessarily opening and doing a lot of programming yet. I think we will see that. So, I think also it's just a good idea to, if you're in a small town, if you're in one of those small towns, you can sign up for a newsletter. You can follow them on social, see what is coming up at the Halley Center in Apex. I do think a lot of what we're going to see coming back. I do think movies, I think we're going to see a lot more outdoor movies happening, and because those are easy to produce, they're low cost, they're easy to do. They're a good way for people to social distance. So I think that'll be a popular thing. And you are seeing a lot of that across the county. Durham also at the DBAP is doing Black history films, Black films, Black cultural films. I can't remember what they called the name of the series. It might just be called Black Films. There's a number of different movie series, and then, I think we'll see more kind of events start to spring up, but it's going to be a while, I think, till we see the big festival stuff return. I think you're going to see a lot of small outdoor things, especially in some of these smaller communities. That's going to be great. That's going to be important to revitalizing those downtowns.
Absolutely. And so at the beginning of September, North Carolina General Assembly approved an unprecedented $9.4 million in emergency aid to the arts, but Wake County and Mecklenburg County were left out of those relief funds. Why was that? So that people can really understand. And I know this is kind of going back further than the crux of what we're talking about, but why was Wake County left out?
Yeah. Well, Nate McGackey from Arts North Carolina is very, very good at talking about this. And the thing that he, I recall him saying is just that we're very grateful for the 9.4, but we would love just, in the future, everybody to be included, right? But, I think the good news is, it's a tricky time, and the CARES Act is a challenge because all the dollars have to be out the door by December 30th. Yes. So both for us and for all the 100 counties across the state, it's a fast moving train. We've all had to kind of figure out how to roll these grants out in a short amount of time. And so, we can talk more about that, but, the kind of short answer, to go back to your question is that what I would say is that though we were left out, we have a great Wake County Commission. They were 100% of them voted for this. They saw the need. Same thing in Charlotte, their county commission stepped up. And it's happened all around the country. I mean, the first municipalities to really put some CARES Act dollars behind arts relief, I think were like Phoenix and San Antonio. Portland was pretty early out there. So a number of communities started to do this. And, my hope is that, more and more will get on board. But there's also, I might be getting too much into the weeds here, but there's a very different way that CARES Act dollars went to the larger municipality or the larger counties than went to the smaller counties. So what we have now is we have actually 3 counties that got an allocation to their arts council directly from their county governments. It's Mecklenburg, Guilford, and Wake. But then in the Triangle, there are now relief funds set up in 3 of the 4 kind of major counties. We have one in, ours at United Arts. The deadline is November 10th. Durham has theirs up, and their deadline is November 9th. And Orange County has theirs up, and it's due on Friday, October 3rd. And I know you're going to be sharing those links, Lauren. And then this is not public yet, but I asked my colleague in Chatham just to what they would be doing, and theirs is going to be going live very soon. And Chatham counties will be due on November 16th. So that's just what's happening in those communities. But if anybody is listening either now or later, there's CARES Act funding available to nonprofits in all 100 counties. If there is a county that does not have its own fund and a nonprofit organization there, they can go directly to the State Arts Council. So that's the good news, is that no nonprofit anywhere in North Carolina will be left out of this funding opportunity. And these are business interruption grants. So they can basically say, look, this has been the cost of doing business and our ability to make income has been drastically affected. They do have to back out their PPP, their forgivable EIDL, and if they got money directly from the NEA. But besides that, they can count anything towards this grant. So I'm very hopeful that it will help organizations. Maybe if we're at 12%, think they're not going to survive, maybe this will get that number down.
Which would be so good.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, the Wake County Board of Commissioners, and I don't know if Vicki Adams is still watching.
Yeah, Vicki's here. Yay. Hey, Vicki. Thank you.
It popped on. She voted to, the commissioners voted to allocate $1 million of federal funds to create the Wake County Nonprofit Arts Relief Fund, which United Arts Council will administer. This money did come from the CARES Act. So what organizations would qualify for these monies? These are not individual grants, these are organizational grants. And what will the money be used for? Will it just be used for the business losses and revenue, a percentage of the business losses and revenue that has happened since March?
Yeah, and I want to say, for one thing, I want to just encourage anybody who's watching, if they want to learn more and they haven't already dug in, to check out the website. Also, we're doing a workshop this Thursday morning at 10:30 a.m. So that's another thing you can do. But it's Wake County 501c3. You have to be based in Wake County, 501c3 organization, and be up to date with IRS filings. Has to function as a nonprofit arts or cultural organization directly related to the creation, education, preservation, presentation of arts or cultural programming, and be the primary presenter or producer of that work. They have to have offered publicly accessible programming for at least 3 years. They have to have somebody who can be the administrator of the fund. So that can either be a staff or a board member. And I think it's a good thing. We've heard from several organizations that are all volunteer, they still have expenses, because like, let's say you're going to put on a festival and you're an all volunteer organization. You're going to put on a festival that got canceled because of COVID. Well, you couldn't get all that money back.
Yeah.
They have to not have gotten funding directly from the General Assembly, because the General Assembly did directly fund some organizations at the same time they did the 9.4 million. In Wake County, the county has said you have to match the dollars. So, but that can be dollars they've already gotten since March or that they can get between March and December. And then they have to demonstrate the cost of business interruption and expenses, at least in the amount that they ask for. So, you know, organizations can ask for up to $50,000, but it's limited by what the 3-year average of their operating budget is. And then they have to say we've had at least this many expenses, because the way the federal government wrote this was this business interruption. So you can't, it's not like a grant because we want to do this programming. This is actually, the way I've heard it described, it's actually backfilling expenses that they've had since the pandemic started. So, you know, organizations have still been paying their staffs. They've still been paying utilities and rent, and maybe they still paid some artists because, you know, they were in the middle of rehearsal before they canceled their show, or they've had some of the costs for the online programming. So, you know, organizations are still incurring a lot of expenses, and this will help them maintain their operations.
The timeline, like you said, is pretty quick. This Thursday is the Zoom meeting, and that will walk organizations through the application process and the requirements. And then the deadline to apply for these funds is November
10th. That's right.
And these are for Wake County organizations, but we have the links for all of the other Durham Arts Council, Chatham, and Orange. I do have to ask you this. I know that United Arts Council was one of the collaborators, along with VAE, Pinecone, Theater Raleigh, and Art Space, that was involved in the NC Artist Relief Fund. And a lot of those monies were going to individual artists with a primary or prioritized funding for BIPOC artists, artists with disabilities, and queer artists.
Yes.
From what I understand, the structure of the fund is still in place, but they're not accepting any more applications. Is that true?
Yeah.
Or where is that stand?
They had, and I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of VAE because they're the lead partner, but they, that fund is still in existence. We'd basically stopped getting applications from artists, and people can still give to that fund, and there have been donations continuing to come in. And what Brandon's really been taking the lead and looking at it and saying, okay, here's somebody who we didn't do as much for as what they lost, so let's go back and do some additional funding for them and so forth. So yeah, he and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk more about it or give you an update. It is still possible to give to that fund. All in all, over $200,000 was raised, which is great. It's, I think one of the other things I'll mention is that, individual artists are also eligible for some additional funding opportunities that Wake County government has. And so we've been pushing that out a lot at United Arts, but every time I have an opportunity to talk about that, I want to, because they've got some really great programs, and artists should, sometimes the place to get your funding is just from an arts funder, and sometimes, there's ways to tap into dollars that are just, more general COVID relief. So they have one program called Wake Forward, and that is a program for small businesses, but they did a carve out in it for sole proprietors. So you don't necessarily have to be, a company with 10, 20 employees, because, a lot of arts businesses are very small, but those are extremely low interest loans. And they're much cheaper than what is available from a commercial lender or anything like that. But then they also have a utility bill payment assistance program. They have a rent assistance program. They have a childcare assistance program. So these are all things that artists, and the best place to go, I can share this link as well, is covid19.wakegov.com. And that's the kind of landing page for all of the different support that Wake County government is offering, that a lot of artists and, creative workers can tap into these resources. I would really, really encourage people to take a look at those, because I just know a lot of artists are struggling with their rent or their utilities, and this could be a way, to just get some of that additional assistance that's really going to help right now.
And Vicky posted that they are lobbying the federal government to extend the deadline until June 20th, 2021. I'm not sure what deadline you're talking about, Vicky.
She's talking about the deadline to spend the CARES Act dollars, which right now need to be spent by December 30th. So yeah, we appreciate that.
So Wake County and our commissioners really are working hard. And like you said, artists and really anybody need to be informed and just go out and vote early. What are you missing? I saw you, whether you were at Raleigh Little Theater, you were at Playmakers, I saw you everywhere.
We like theater, what can I say?
And it was nice to run into you at the theater. What are you missing the most about the arts right now? I'm missing live theater, but what are you missing?
Yeah, and like all that. I mean, I just miss the sense of community. I mean, I just think like one of the best places, if the best place to be is in the theater itself, then maybe the second best place to be is in the lobby, because you get to have those conversations with people either before you've seen the show or right afterwards, whether you liked it, whether you didn't, I mean, it's just, there's so much to talk about, and it's a shared experience. So I'm missing those, and I mean, I'll be back. I think we'll just be out at shows all the time. But I mean, I'm also just missing the festivals, because fall is such a great festival time of year. I normally volunteer with Pinecone and help out with the Bluegrass Festival and MC a stage at the Wide Open Bluegrass, and that's so much fun. And I love hopscotch and just love so many of the different festivals. Fiesta del Pueblo, I love. Like, there's so many great festivals, the African American Cultural Festival. I mean, in the Triangle, there's a different festival every single weekend. I mean, you can just, fill up your soul with great, culture and food and interactions and all that. And I mean, that is just, it's really sad. But I think that the silver lining is that hopefully we can find some gratitude in how much those things mean to us, that those are important things to return to when we can, and again, like I said, I mean, there's so much great work that's happened in lieu of what could have happened. I was talking the other day with the executive director of the African American Cultural Festival, and they had 40,000 people watch their event online. Well, they normally only get a few thousand more than that in person. So she's like, now we have this huge online footprint that we didn't have, and that's going to really help our festival in the future. Or look at, all the great work that the Bluegrass Festival did, and how cool that was that they shot things all over Raleigh, and they did their award show virtually. We watched that award show. And that was a lot of fun. I normally just go to the outdoor parts. I don't normally watch the award show. So this year we watched it. And so, we're also seeing some things that we wouldn't normally see. One thing that I've been loving is Mike Wiley's Higher Ground series. We've watched every single one of those. He's had incredible speakers. And, Mike is just, you learn so much every time he speaks. He brings so much culture and history to the table. And so, he did that instead of the trip that they normally take to Alabama. And so that's incredible. So that's built a whole new online community in a place where normally you would have had to go, in person, and not that, I mean, that'd be a great thing, but it's a different community that has come up because of that. So, so I am both missing all of the things that you talked about, but I'm also grateful for a lot of the things that we do have.
Absolutely. And I keep saying, quarantine, there's no quarantining creativity, which I believe. I think artists have been incredibly resourceful, and organizations have been incredibly resourceful. Vicky and I, in our past lives, Vicky's still active in it, but in my past life, and this is how Vicky and I know each other, we were very involved in PTA and in the Artists in the Schools program, bringing artists into the schools, which is a program I love so much, and I know so many artists involved. So what's happening with that? I know you had a virtual artist fair, cultural arts fair, like you do every fall. And are the artists able to deliver things virtually to students?
Yes, yes, they certainly are. And yeah, so you're right. And I don't think I knew that about your history. That's Vicky said, once a PTA mom, always a PTA mom.
Yes.
That's great.
But they don't have PTA. Vicky and I now both have college students. There is no
Right.
PTA in college, right, Vicky? But yeah, so talk to me about artists in schools.
Yeah, so we moved and I think the staff at United Arts did a really admirable job of figuring out how to do this event virtually, because it, like everything, like you said, you're the pivot. So we did we did trainings online, we did expos online, and made them more kind of like just meet and greets for the artists to get to meet the cultural arts reps, which, as you know, but maybe not all the viewers might know, are the volunteers in each one of the schools. So there's hundreds of cultural arts reps around the county. And we had our first deadline and we did not get as many applications. So that was disappointing, but not surprising, because we know how hard it is, how much uncertainty there is in the schools. But actually, Lynn Road Elementary, I talked the other day with their cultural arts rep. Her name is Emily, and they've got 5 bookings this year, and they're hoping to do one of them outdoors in the spring. But, they said, we'll adjust that based on what needs to happen, but everything else is virtual. So that was a great example. And they're bringing some artists who are local back, and they've got some touring folks who will join them virtually. But because we got less applications, we increased the subsidy to all the PTAs, which they appreciated, because the PTAs are also hard hit by this, because a lot of them couldn't do their spring fundraisers. So and then we'll do another round of grant applications later in the year to try and pick up some of those schools that we think would have liked to have participated, but maybe just things were too uncertain. They couldn't quite figure out how it's going to work. So we're hopeful, because we really want those artists to have that income still. That's really important that we are supporting. That's one of the biggest ways we support artists each year is is through that program, because a lot of artists,
and it's so important. Having been the cultural arts rep at my daughter's school, seeing the faces of the kids when you bring in the arts programs, there's nothing like it.
Amen.
It's amazing.
Amen. No, I mean, I still remember, Chuck Davis coming into my middle school, and I'd never seen anything like the African American Dance Ensemble. And, I think for a lot of kids, it's some of the very first cultural experiences they ever have, and they will never forget those. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, to really, open a young person's eyes. So I know that a lot of those artists really love it. One thing that I wasn't necessarily expecting is to hear how rewarding. I mean, I thought that the artists in that program liked it, but I don't think I knew how passionate they were about it until I, got into this job, and I just hear them talk about, like, oh my gosh, like, this is one of the best things I get to do, interacting with these young people.
The support that United Arts Council gives to individual artists, and again, kind of in a past life, I was a visual artist at Art Space, and I did receive an artist grant from United Arts Council, and I was a visiting artist at a school in Florida. I had gone to an art show there, and United Arts Council funded the opportunity for me to go into a middle school in Miami, and
Cool.
and it was so cool. So,
is that your work behind you by any chance?
no, no. was like, what are you talking about?
Oh no, over your left shoulder.
I was a mixed media jewelry artist. I was like, what's he talking about? No, I was a mixed media jewelry artist and spent a long time at Art Space and really loved the visual arts and really valued all of the opportunities United Arts Council offered, not just to artists, but to schools, because that was where my passion was in bringing arts to kids. So thank you for that. And I know the work is just going to continue as we go through this and navigate this strange time. And people can donate to United Arts too. I know you said you've got some things coming up in the pipeline, but if people are just really moved by what they've heard today and don't want to wait, they can donate to United Arts, correct?
Yes, and I should mention too that because you'd asked about supporting your local arts organizations, remember that Giving Tuesday is coming up. It is Tuesday, December 1st. And at United Arts, we're soon going to be announcing we've got a donor who's offered to match contributions that day. So that'll be really neat. And then we've got some like fun little thank you gifts that we're going to be offering people. But I think that what we certainly appreciate people's support, but you know, a lot of Giving Tuesday is a great day just to think about, you know, who you're going to support, because there will be a lot of, I expect there will be a lot of matches. There will be a lot of you know, special ways to amplify your impact. So, you know, everybody who's listening, you know, think about those few organizations, you know, maybe plan ahead a little bit if you're able to. And a lot of people can't give right now, and that's okay too. But if you can, plan ahead and maybe make a mental note of December 1st as a great day to support the arts in your community.
And it's also a great time if you are working to see if your corporation will match donations. A lot of times they do. So,
yes, they will.
Thank you so much, Charles, for being with me and hanging out with me. It's always good to see you. And since I haven't been to the theater, I have been to the theater in the last couple of weeks, but I haven't been over the last few months like I normally do. So
well, what did you see? I'm going to ask you a question.
I saw Cape Fear Regional Theater's Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Brew. Cool. They did a really nice job keeping people safe. It was outdoors. And I saw 100 Words for Snow at Burning Coal last week or whenever it was. And it was really an interesting experience. The design elements in that show were really beautiful. There were some things I didn't love about it, but I just was happy to be in a live theater. Happy to go back to live.
Tell you. Yeah, my Emily and I were in Asheville a couple months ago, and we were someplace we didn't know there was going to be a band, and we were all distanced. We were in hula hoops. We were at Highland Brewing Company, and seeing live music for the first time in like 6 months, 7 months, we were just like, you know, I mean, like, I felt like we were like, you know, like cave people who had been thawed out, you know, and just, it was so, what is this wonderful, amazing thing? You know, it was really something. So I can imagine that experience of being back in the theater. I'm glad you had that. I'm a little jealous. I got to go over there and see that show.
It's really interesting. And Steve has said, and I think this is a great way to close, is the pandemic has been a wake-up call that makes us all realize how much the arts enrich our lives. And it's so true. I think one takeaway is that we've all leaned on the arts, whether you're watching a live stream or you're watching a conversation or you're watching, we watched What the Constitution Means to Me on Prime a couple of weeks ago. Whatever you're seeing, I think people are realizing how important the arts are. So if that's what comes out of it, then I remember that when things open back up.
That's right. And I'll throw out my quote along the same lines. Art is the highest form of hope, right? Gerhard Richter. Yeah. So.
You always have great quotes. You always have good quotes. Last time we spoke, you said, all passes, art endures. And it was so hopeful. So thank you for that. And thank